Welcome back to Capitol Review. I'm Mark Hall. This week, the U.S. Department of Education fired half of its staff. President Donald Trump has called the shutdown of the department very, very important, and that education should return to the states. Newly confirmed Secretary Linda McMahon is tasked with stripping the department down to the greatest extent possible. Joining us now is DC News Now's Hayley Milon. Hayley, all week education activists, educators, and fired DOE workers, they've been rallying here in DC. You actually attended one of those protests. What was the environment like?
Yeah, Mark, there was a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of anger and fear is how I would categorize the emotions there. There were fired workers from all over the country, activists as well. They talked about their role within the Department of Education because there are a lot of misconceptions about it. They talked about the loss of federal funding, the impact that that will have on important programs. They talked about the uncertainty of the future of Pell Grants. One woman who spoke was from the state of Alabama. She was an investigator for the schools in the state of Alabama, was fired from her position. She said at the time of her firing, she was the only investigator listed for the entire state. She says investigations just won't be possible at this point. So the impact is so huge, Mark.
Hayley, the Department of Education, many call it a small department compared to others, but what other kind of work does the department do?
It really directs funding. It's kind of like a hall monitor for federal funding to go to education programs. Think Title I schools, Pell Grants, federal student loans. It directs all of that money, administrative work really. There's a misconception that the department implements ideology, right? Cultural ideology, but really it's all about funding for the most part and those investigations. However, about 10% of public K-12 education funding comes from the DOE, which isn't a huge chunk, but it's really the programs that are disproportionately impacted. You know, the concerns here focus on what's available to students in local communities. Title I schools, a lot of them are concentrated in the same school divisions. Those students, they receive funding from the federal government to pay for school meals, reduced either free breakfast and lunch or reduced breakfast and lunch. Excellence programs to kind of close the achievement gap to ensure that there's a bit of equity in the education that they're receiving, not the most appealing school divisions maybe for some teachers to go to. And of course, programs for special education, students with disabilities, implementing IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And there's uncertainty about the future of that program too. So Mark really just, it establishes the federal funding and lays out how it can be spent.
And Hayley, quickly, it would take an act of Congress to dissolve the DOE completely. Yeah. So what else can be done to kind of strip away its authority? You
know, the Trump administration is tasking Secretary Linda McMahon with just taking away as much from the department as possible. Of course, those student loans, she wants, the Trump administration is eyeing transferring them to maybe Treasury, the Department of Commerce, or oddly enough, the Small Business Administration remains to be seen because the future of those loans tied up in the courts. Unclear what department could handle 40 million individual borrowers, but stripping down the department, Mark.
Hayley Milon, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.